After uploading my last video, it happened. My 12-year-old dryer stopped working. Now I knew this thing was on its way out just from the last recording. I turned the volume up so you can hear the shimmy as well as the camera shaking. Investigating the dryer, we could see that there's no tension on the drum, and the rollers are completely shot from the sound it makes when I spin it. Now I was on the fence about doing this video, but given that I need to fix this dryer anyway, and you guys overwhelmingly voted for it, well, let's hit record and see what we got. In this video, we're gonna completely overhaul this 12-year-old Samsung dryer. Oh yeah, that plug has got to go. There's no way we're gonna work on a 220-volt appliance while it's hot. Next, let's remove these two screws that hold the dryer lid in place. Using the palm of our hands, we can push this thing loose like this. Just so we don't mix up any screws, let's keep them together as we set them aside. For this control panel, all we need to do is remove these three screws. Next, let's grab the top of it and pull it toward us. Let's be careful though, as there are a couple wiring harnesses that communicate with the dryer here. Let's disconnect them and pull this top panel off. But let's not forget these three screws. For the front panel removal, we'll need to start by undoing these four screws. Opening the dryer door reveals four big support screws on the left and right hand side, while the bottom two have the regular fitment. After undoing the last screw from the door hinge, we can simply lift the door up to separate it from the rest of the dryer. Now that the front panel has all the screws removed, there are a couple of tabs still holding it in place. Normally we would use a flathead screwdriver to press these down, but because this model has the room, let's lift it up instead. And just like the last panel, there's a plug we'll need to undo to break it free. As we can see here, it's pretty obvious that our dryer belt is missing. If you have a broken dryer that isn't putting out heat, you won't need to disassemble this dryer any further, as we have clear access to the heating element as seen here. Since I'm not that lucky in this instance, let's continue the disassembly by removing these three screws. It's interesting to see what 12 years of use is collected inside this thing. Well, that's alright. We'll be sanitizing everything before it's all said and done. Next, let's undo the wiring harness that goes to the moisture sensor. After that, we can remove the control panel support by undoing these 5 screws. Behind it, we'll need to twist these ties that are securing the wiring harness to the support. Let's not forget our screws. Continuing right along, let's undo these ties securing the harness to the dryer's drum support. To gain access to the insides of the dryer, we'll need to remove these 4 screws securing it to the frame. Looking closely, we can see that there are tabs indicating we need to lift this support in order to remove it. After that, we're free to remove this drum from the dryer, exposing all the fun stuff. Aha! There we are. I knew this belt was hiding somewhere. From this angle, we could see the heating element, the driver motor's impeller, these worn back rollers, and the top of the tensioner pulley. For our first order of business, let's replace these noisy rollers. If your dryer isn't sounding whisper quiet while it's running, these are likely the culprit. Taking an impact wrench to one side, while holding the other with pliers will make short work of it. I don't like that these bearings lack any sort of lubrication, so let's apply some gear oil and rectify that. I saw some people online who would just replace the rollers by themselves. But the wear on these bolts is counterproductive if it's done in that manner. After replacing the rollers on the front panel, we can move on to the back and tackle those next. Now the nut for these rollers resides behind this panel, and since I left behind some of my tools at the in-laws, we'll make do with the standard set of pliers. Although a box wrench would have made this process much easier. Next, let's replace this beat-up tensioner. These things are known to make loud squeaks when they're failing. To remove it, a typical stubby screwdriver is all that is needed here. After securing this new pulley tensioner to the mount, we'll need to attach a spring so that it will retain pressure on the dryer belt we'll be installing. Speaking of belts, since I won't be able to fit a camera in the dryer while I put one on, the way you install it is by pulling both ends of the belt under the tensioner to loop it on the drive motor. The tensioner will have to be lifted in order for it to fit, but it beats describing the installation in a serpentine manner. Next, let's tackle this heating element. The only thing holding it in place is a single screw. Now let's undo the power as well as the thermistors. You can tell I've already replaced this heating element before, as the screw placements aren't factory. Either way, we'll need to undo all the screws surrounding the housing, and let's not forget these old thermistors as well. To free the heating element plug, you'll notice that there are some tabs we have to bend in order for it to release. Now, I don't know where you reside in the world, but here in the States, thermistors are expected to come with the new heating element. After reassembly, we're ready to move on to the drive motor. Let's first undo these two screws on this plastic shroud. To make life a little easier, I simply attach a set of channel locks on the other end of the drive's pulley. If you're worried about denting the inside of the dryer, using a thick book for its surface area can minimize risk here. Like most impellers I've come across, this nut is removed by spinning it clockwise instead of counterclockwise. Yeesh. This thing looks like a great candidate for the dishwasher. Next, we need to remove these two retaining clips that are securing the drive motor in place. These clips are removed by pressing the tabs on the end and unhooking it from the base mount. Be careful undoing these clips in any other way, as these things are spring-loaded. Now we can remove the power plug and yank this motor out. After placing the new drive where the old one sat, we can attach the clips in the same way that we removed it. Now we can plug the power back in and put the impeller back together. Just remember that this nut screws in the opposite rotation of all the others. In this case, we'll spin it counterclockwise. In this instance, I applied too much force and the drive's pulley came loose. To solve for this, let's jam a screwdriver into the impeller and tighten it that way. Sorry for the poor camera shot, but I felt like including this tidbit instead of cutting it from the video. And the rest of this is just putting it back together how we found it. And that about does it for this video. If you like this content, or if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. And as always, I'll see you next time. Let go. Oh my God. What? Come on. Give me here. No. No. Ah. Come on. Give it to me.